Welcome everyone to the final Jane Jacobs lecture of the spring 2024. And we are so excited to have Kimberly Dowdell with us today. I want to say thank you to Marywood University's School of Architecture for sponsoring this event in association with the American Institute of Architects, Northeastern Pennsylvania, and all of our Center for the Living City board members and donors for helping continue this amazing series of conversations centered around the legacy of Jane Jacobs. So we're coming to you from a bunch of different locations today, which is really fun. I'm up at Boston. We have folks at the School of Architecture. We have folks out in Italy, and we have our speaker coming to you from New York. And I'm going to disappear and have Kim Hagan, who is our faculty liaison for women in architecture and design and the NOMA group on our campus, introduce Kimberly Dowdell, our speaker. And then what we're going to do is have 3 students who are really interested in all of this work, have a conversation with Kimberly. Kimberly's going to do a presentation about her work, give us context on what she's been working on and what she's been up to, which is quite a bit. Then the students on the panel are going to ask questions. But while we're doing that, please feel free to, and we encourage you to, drop in some questions for Kimberly in the Q&A or the chat. And then Kim Hagan and myself will turn back on near the end around 4:45, and we will field some more of your questions that could come from the audience. We really do encourage this as a conversation with Kimberly, and we are really lucky to have her here. So thank you, Kimberly. Thank you all for being here. I am going to disappear, and I'll see you back in about 45 minutes. Kim Hagan, take it from here.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Kimberly Dowdell, AIA and NOMAC, is the 2024 president of the American Institute of Architects, AIA. Dowdell is also a principal with global design firm HOK, serving as a firm-wide director of strategic relationships. In 2019 to 2020, Dowdell served as a national president of the National Organization of Minority Architects, NOMA. Dowdell has devoted her career to laying the foundations for architects to create positive social and environmental change on a local, national, and global scale. She has intentionally connected a diverse array of built environment stakeholders to help advance her professional mission, which is to improve people's lives by design. At HOK, Dowdell co-chairs the firm's Diversity Advisory Council, DIC, and co-founded HOK's Impact, the firm's social responsibility program. She also co-founded the Social Economic Environmental Design, SEED, an organization that promotes design for healthy communities in 2005. Dowdell earned her Master's of Public Administration at Harvard and her Bachelor of Architecture at Cornell, where she was elected by her fellow alumni to serve as the Board of Trustees in 2022. Thank you, Kimberly. And now I'm going to introduce students and they'll introduce themselves. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lene Burkhardt, and I am an interior architect student at Marywood University. I'm currently studying abroad for the semester, so I am in Italy. I am also the president of the National Organization of Minority Architect Students Club. So this is quite exciting to be able to talk with you today. And I want to thank you for being able to take time to actually join us for this presentation.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a 4th-year architecture student in Scranton. I am also a communications minor, which is a little interesting take, I think. But I was able to work with Maria the past couple of semesters, getting a few articles out regarding the Center for the Living City. And on top of that, I'm also an AIS member. I don't remember, we briefly met at the conference in New Orleans in January, so good to see you again.
You too.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to this talk and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Victoria. I'm also a 3rd-year architecture student, studying with Lene here in Italy, in Florence. I am the WIAD president at Marywood and also the class representative for our school. Sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for having me here. It's really a delight to share a little bit of my story with you all, and then I think we'll go into Q&A after I give some, give a brief presentation with some slides that I prepared for the conversation. So I will jump into my slideshow, and then I'll turn the table back over, or turn the mic back over to you all. So one moment here. All right. And then if you can just confirm, you can see my slides in full screen. Is that working?
Perfect.
Yes. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. All right. So so delighted that Marywood University invited me, specifically my good friend Maria. Just really excited to sort of virtually join you all. I was there physically at the university last year, receiving an incredible award in Jane Jacobs' name. And so excited to be here for the 2024 Jane Jacobs Lecture Series. So I'm going to speak just very briefly on the topic I'm calling Diverse City, shaping the future of the urban built environment, which is something that I've really been interested in since I was 11 years old. So I'll tell you about that in just a moment. So I was born and raised in Detroit, and you all heard my bio, so I won't kind of go line by line, but these are the things that sort of all together really resulted in the path that I've taken and sort of where I am today. But it all started actually a little bit before I was born in Detroit, when I was sort of experiencing its heyday. There was this really famous and an important department store in downtown Detroit called the Hudson's Department Store. And so these are images of the store and just how big it is. It was a full city block in the city. However, it closed the year that I was born, so I never actually experienced it as a place to shop. It looked more like this in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up in Detroit. So you can see like the broken glass and the graffiti and things like that. And so I had this kind of epiphany-like moment when I was 11, where I said, I really want to become an architect. Originally, I wanted to be a doctor, and I switched to wanting to become an architect so that I could fix this building and help to, of course, also fix other buildings and help to repair kind of what I saw as unhealthy in Detroit. And so I feel like even to this day, the built environment does have a strong impact on health and the way people view their communities. And so I wanted to improve my community through fixing this building. However, unfortunately, just a few years later, when I was in high school, the building was demolished in one of the largest building demolitions that the city has. Actually, I think that is the largest in the city. So that really sparked my interest in understanding what happened in Detroit. How did we get to the point where we had so much, so many strong neighborhoods and so much to be proud of, to the point where, over years with this investment, we started to see houses and other types of buildings go away. And so I studied that both in architecture school, but also in my graduate studies at getting my master's in public administration. And so I learned a lot about things like redlining and other policies that really shaped how we got to the point where so much of the city had eroded. And I'm pleased to report that Detroit is turning around now. And so a lot of the demolitions have halted, and we're starting to rebuild parts of the city back, but there's still a lot of work to do. And so really interested in seeing that happen. And I know it's not just Detroit, there are lots of cities that experience this, but this is my kind of personal experience I wanted to share with you all. And one of the books that I think is really interesting to help just explain, how cities suffer in this way is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. And it talks about systemic disinvestment and the impact of that. And then I also just want to talk briefly about cities. So I'm actually sitting in a building that's right across from Bryant Park, the HOK New York studio. But I actually use this image all the time, even when I'm not sitting in New York. And I love it because it just shows the texture of the city, and sort of you can kind of feel the rhythm and just the dynamic nature of cities. And I've actually at this point lived in 7 different cities, including Rome. So for those who are studying abroad right now, I had that experience many, many years ago, and just encourage you to continue enjoying that. But I've lived in 6 different American cities, and there's a lot that we can be proud of, but there's also a lot of work to do. And also our cities, not just in the US, but across the world, are becoming more dense. And so we can expect to see a lot of population growth, over the coming decades. So this image just kind of shows what we might expect and where. And of course, we can't always predict the future, but I think if we are anticipating heightened density, then there's a lot of work for us as architects and those working in the built environment to be prepared to do. But the other thing to keep in mind, at least in the US context, is that diversity is happening. And so by 2045, a little over half of the US population will be people of color from the various different groups that are represented on this chart. And so I think it's really important that we are mindful of the expanding diversity of our nation, again in the US, and be prepared to ensure that communities are designed with diverse perspectives in mind. In fact, there's a really great book I'd recommend you all check out called The Difference by Scott Page. And it talks about the power of diversity and how it creates better groups, firms, schools, and societies. And it's not just about racial diversity. There are all kinds of different types of diversity. So I just want to encourage you to think about how our design teams and other groups can be benefited by a more diverse set of perspectives. It's funny, I was at the airport this morning and I ran into Tanya Allen, who's a nonprofit leader in the Midwest. And I've been using this slide for years because I heard her speak maybe 5 years ago at this point. And she said, diversity is about counting the people. Inclusion is about making the people count. And so just also being mindful of not just the number of people and what they look like, but also bringing them into the conversation, making sure they can, contribute in a way that is meaningful. And so part of the work that I did while I was the NOMA president in 2019 and 2020 was my All in for NOMA platform. And so the All stood for Access, Leadership, and Legacy. And I won't read this now, but basically, one, I like things that are like easy for people to remember relative to like my presidential platforms, which I'll share the AI platform in just a moment. All in for NOMA was really a way for people to, one, you always got to have a good hashtag, but also I think it's important for people to be really clear about what you're trying to achieve. And so access is about creating access to the profession of architecture, specifically for those who are historically underrepresented. And so specifically, African-American architects they represent 2% of the entire population of architects in the US. And in fact, there's so few Black women, we all kind of know our number, like in terms of when we were licensed. So I'm number 295, and right now there's just over 600 Black women licensed architects in the US. And so those are some of the things that, at that point in time, NOMA was focused on and still focused on now. I'm just no longer on the NOMA board because I'm now on the AIA board. But access is about just helping us to create more access, just as the name suggests. Leadership is about helping to facilitate more leadership opportunities for a more diverse pool of people to contribute to solving some of our most complex issues. And then legacy is about helping our members to create a legacy and help to feed the other parts of the pathways into architecture. So moving on to present day, More in 24, again, you always need a good hashtag. So More in 24 is what I've selected for AIA in my year as president. And the 3 sort of items that I'm focused on are more money, more members, and more mission. Architects, I'm actually just going to read this to make it simple and probably spend less time talking than going off the cuff. So architects create a great deal of value for our clients, yet our average salaries are significantly lower than peers and other similarly valuable and rigorous careers. So AIA is really advocating for better business conditions for architects so that we can improve those starting salaries and improve the ability for people to make the choice to become an architect, because it can be a barrier for people to understand like the cost of education compared to starting salaries. Like we have to make the economics a little bit better for people so that we can attract and retain the very best talent in this profession to work on all kinds of different built environment issues. More members. So in 2023, AI's global membership surpassed 98,000, which is great. I'm the AI's 100th president, and so I'm challenging us to prove our value. And in doing that, we will hopefully get more members. And we'd love to welcome our 100,000th member this year. And then more mission. If we do those two things and help our members prosper, we can actually help our achieve our mission. So what is our mission? To empower and inspire architects to improve society and transform the world. So that is what I'm very focused on this year with my board of directors and the larger membership of AIA. So here's a plug to definitely connect with your local AIA chapter and contribute, because we are who we are because of you and our members. So we really encourage you to join us in achieving this really important mission. So with that, I'll say thank you. Also, I have to get to Marywood again soon to check on my tree. So last year I was very honored to be awarded the Jane Jacobs Leadership Award from the Center for the Living City, and a tree was planted in my name. And so the tree is right here in the image, and I know it's grown a bit since then. So thank you again, Marywood, for the tree and also for the opportunity to speak at the Jane Jacobs lecture series. So with that, I'll stop sharing and get back to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for your presentation. So congratulations on becoming the 2024 AIA president. So as the 100th person to hold the office, so you represent the two key firsts for an AIA president. You were the first Black woman and the first millennial to hold the top office. How does this feel?
It feels, in a way, it almost feels surreal that it took so long for a Black woman to be in this position. But I think it had to happen, and I'm really honored to be the person to kind of take us past that point. And I certainly want other firsts to happen. There are plenty of perspectives that that have been missing from AI leadership for a long time, and so hopefully my serving in this role will help to inspire other women, people from different racial, ethnic backgrounds, and other just other perspectives, to say, hey, my voice matters here too, and there are plenty of architects who need to see someone like me or hear from someone like me. I truly believe that representation matters, and if we aren't sort of leading by example, then we're missing opportunities. So so I'm glad to be able to sort of share the perspective of just one person. So I'm speaking from my experience as a Black woman. I can't say that I necessarily represent all Black women at all time, but all the time. But I am doing my best to kind of share the perspectives that I have from my lived experiences. And then as a millennial, I think it's important that we really talk about the intergenerational workplace and the dynamics that exist from generation to generation. So to be the first to represent the millennial voice, I think, is also a great honor, and certainly looking forward to seeing other millennial colleagues step up and serve in different ways throughout the AIA, both globally and also in local chapters and components, but also welcoming Gen Z into the profession and helping to cultivate more opportunities for our younger members, which includes the folks on this call. So that's how I feel. I'm empowered and just excited to be able to show people, as I used during my campaign, envision new possibilities.
All right, so my question is that I'm trying to get NOMAS, the National Organization of Minority Students, at our school, trying to get it up and running again. So I'm interested about your time as being the national president of the National Organization of Minority Architecture, or NOMA. So how did NOMA begin? How do you feel it's made a significant impact on the architecture field today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So NOMA was actually founded in 1971 at the so there were over a dozen or so Black architects who had convened at the AIA conference. That was actually in Detroit, my hometown. I hadn't been born yet, but it was where I grew up. But the AIA conference was happening in Detroit, and this group of primarily Black firm owners realized that there weren't many other people at the conference that were really speaking to their specific issues, the discrimination that they were facing, and they decided to convene separately as a group to just talk about, how can they help improve business conditions, and again, kind of together combat the discrimination that they were facing. And so, here we are over 50 years later, and NOMA now has, over 3,000 members. But really, the point of convening that initial group was to help, to really help advance the conditions of at that point the Black architect. But then, I think over time it was important to note that lots of different people from minority perspectives were experiencing challenges. So then being a voice for those who had a limited voice in the profession. And now we enjoy a very strong relationship. Or I'm sorry, well, I'm speaking as AI. So now NOMA, so when I was speaking as NOMA president, we enjoyed a conversation, or I'm sorry, we enjoyed a great relationship with AIA. Now I'm on the other side as AIA president, and we still enjoy a great relationship with NOMA. But it's important that those two groups really work together, because AIA is still working, to improve equity issues throughout the profession. And in fact, I mentioned the mission of AIA, but two of our key strategic priorities are climate action and equity. And so the partnership between AIA and NOMA on equity issues in particular are really meaningful. In addition, AIA has a committee called Equity in the Future of Architecture Committee. And so that group works closely with NOMA. In fact, generally the NOMA president serves on that committee to really create connectivity. And so to kind of get back to your question, I think NOMA is really intended, and it still functions in this way today, to really help be a voice for those who have generally had a limited voice, but also to help improve representation and help to improve access to this profession, and to really help people to flourish and again combat the discrimination that's often associated with being in a minority group. So thanks for the question, and also thank you for your leadership there at Marywood.
So at HOK, you co-chair the firm's Diversity Advisory Council and co-founded HOK Impact, which is the firm's social responsibility program. Can you tell us more about those initiatives and how we as students can actively contribute to positive social change?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually joined HOK on April 7th, 2008. So on Sunday, it was like 16 years. Although I haven't been here the entire time, I left to do a bunch of other things, and then I came back. I'm what's called an HOK boomerang employee. But in my first round with HOK very early in my career, I was in my 20s at that point. Myself and several other younger members of the firm, we really, we started to realize that we were all doing, important kind of impactful work, like mentoring with the ACE mentor program. We were doing things, many of us were involved with NOMA activities, like the annual service project. We were also doing things like construction and other things that really helped to contribute to improving our communities, and also doing some pro bono design work for communities who wouldn't necessarily be able to afford to hire an architect. And so that was all wonderful, and we were all really excited about the opportunity to kind of pool the resources of the firm to really amplify that work. And so what we decided to do was create the specific initiative HOK Impact to help us not only measure what we were doing across our 20 plus offices globally, but also to amplify that work and to recruit other people to come to the firm and join us in that, or if they were already at the firm, to really support those efforts. And so we're proud that HOK Impact was founded officially in 2011. So it's been over a decade now that we've been able to advance that sort of corporate social responsibility work, which now is, I think, more so referred to as ESG, or environmental social governance work. But it's an important sort of part of our culture to give back. And so it was really empowering for me as a then young person to go to office leadership, with some of the other, peers that co-founded HOK Impact, and just say, hey, we're really interested in exploring this opportunity. So we'd love to have some funding and other types of resources to flesh it out. And so it was great to get that support and to see that initiative still thriving over a decade later. And then just a few years later, actually after I had left HOK to do real estate project management work at a different company, I was an owner's rep in New York for a number of years. But so while I was gone, the Diversity Advisory Council was founded. So that's also been around for a little bit over a decade as well. But the Diversity Advisory Council is it's really intentional about ensuring that each of our our studios across the globe have a representative that can tie into our our efforts to be more diverse and inclusive and equitable. And the things that the DAC, there are three co-chairs. I'm one co-chair, and then my other co-chairs are Shiva Mendez and Damon Shepard, and the three of us are in regular communication about just the issues and opportunities that we see across the firm. And one of the major things that we advance is our mentorship effort. So we understand that it's important for everyone to have a mentor, but especially those coming from backgrounds that may be less well represented, just being intentional about ensuring that they can connect with someone to get just answers to their questions and additional support. Another thing that we do with the Diversity Advisory Council is we actually are intentional about doing outreach to companies that we might work with, like engineering companies or other types of sub-consultants, and making sure that there's a diverse array of people that we can team with. And so, in fact, part of the reason why I'm here in New York today is because this initiative called HOK Tapestry, which we established just a few years ago, is really geared toward us curating diverse teams, which I mentioned are important for success. And so thinking about the big airport projects and stadiums and hospitals that HOK does. In fact, I flew into LaGuardia today, and I was really proud of the work that my colleagues here have done to design that airport, but it's in partnership with other companies. And so every large project requires other companies to participate. And so we want to be intentional about curating diverse teams to support our work. So those are the actually three initiatives I just threw in Tapestry at the end, but HOK Impact, the Diversity Advisory Council, and HOK Tapestry are things that I'm really proud to work on, and to just connect the different dots between our 25 plus studios across the world.
Kimberly, you also co-founded Social Economic Environmental Design, also known as SEED, an organization that promotes design for healthy communities, in 2005. Can you tell us about SEED, and again, help us understand how we can get involved?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
So
you.
it's interesting, the HOK Impact story is connected to the SEED story. So I was actually giving a presentation to my colleagues at HOK virtually, because so HOK is a very large firm, and it was even 10 plus years ago, but we had to be intentional about, we used WebEx for the most part to kind of get everyone together, not unlike how we're using Zoom today and many other platforms. So I was giving a presentation to people all over the firm around, I guess it was 2010, and the presentation was about SEED. And after I gave the presentation, so I'll tell you about SEED in a moment, but after I gave the SEED presentation, one of my colleagues from the HOK St. Louis office reached out, and we started talking about the importance of doing community-centered work. And that's actually what launched the conversations that led to HOK Impact. So SEED was the seed for for HOK impact. But I actually came up with the concept for SEED while I was a college student. So I always encourage college students to voice your opinion about something that you think can be better, or if you have an idea like this, this is your moment. And so I'll tell you about my moment, which was the summer of 2005 when I was going into my 5th year of architecture school. So I was interning with the U.S. General Services Administration in the Office of the Chief Architect. And so GSA is basically the government, it is the government, and the GSA is responsible for all government related buildings. So they're like the largest landowner in the country. So things like border stations and federal office buildings and everything that's like courthouses, everything that's federal, GSA is responsible for. And so I was working in the office of the chief architect as an intern, and my supervisor at the time, Steve Lewis, who's still a great friend of mine and mentor to this day, he handed me a magazine article to read as part of my learning and development there. And the article was called "The Ethics of Brick" by Lance Hosey, and that really exposed me to the triple bottom line. And the semester before, I'd actually just learned what the LEED rating system was. And so I sort of understood what LEED was. And at the time, GSA was requiring all federal buildings to achieve some level of LEED certification. So I sort of read the article, and it talked about the importance of basically how a building can have an important impact on the social fabric of a community, and of course the environmental impact, but also the economic impact. And so I thought to myself, as a college student, well, I mean, it's great that LEED really measures a lot of the environmental impact, but we should have something that more closely examines the social impact of projects, and we should call it SEED because it rhymes with LEED, and it'd be easier to remember, right? So SEED was sort of born from that initial. Again, I was inspired by the article, and then I talked to my mentor and at that point supervisor, Steve, about the concept. He's like, "Oh, that's really great. Why don't you spend sort of the balance of your summer researching if there are other rating systems out there, other ways that we can use this tool to support the government and perhaps other types of clients." And so long story short, I did that research, and there really wasn't much out there. And then fast forward to I go back to school. So it's like fall of 2005, and Steve lets me know that he shares this idea with some of his colleagues that were affiliated with the Harvard Loeb Fellowship, and they really liked the idea. So he said, "Well, you can use the idea, but you have to bring Kimberly Dowdell along because it was her idea." So thankfully that happened, and we've continued to kind of maintain a community that works on advancing our mission, which is to advance the right of every person to live in a socially, economically, and environmentally healthy community. And so really looking at the triple bottom line and being kind of a counterpart to LEED. In fact, I'm really pleased that LEED has incorporated some of the SEED principles, and I think if you have SEED certification, that counts toward to some credit within the LEED system. So there's some connectivity there, which I'm excited that happened. And again, it came from a college student. That was me like many years ago. So please voice your opinions, and definitely share your ideas, and hopefully it blossoms into something like a seed.
All right, so my next question is that at your inauguration, you said that my instincts tell me that the AIA must do more to evaluate, support, and propel architects into a new evolution of practice for the betterment of our society. In fact, my presidential promise to you is more. So how can we as future leaders in the field of architecture and design do more today? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so much more to do. I do think that it's important that as architects, we do a better job of articulating the value that we create for our clients and our communities. And I think we have to, like across the board, charge appropriately for our services. And then, run our practices, like many other businesses with profitability being a key factor. Now, of course, we want to prioritize good design and to ensure that the work that we're doing has a lasting positive impact, but we also have to balance that a little bit better with economics. And so AIA has a lot of resources. So for all the AIA members out there, there are local chapters that host programs and courses and workshops and things like that, but also there's AIAU, which has a whole series of sort of online learning opportunities to again help not just architects but also firm owners to better understand how to manage their practice and to hopefully prioritize profitability a little bit better. The other thing I think would be really helpful is for more schools of architecture to prioritize preparing students for business. And so I know the curriculum is already like jam-packed, but I think that the extent to which our architecture schools can help students understand how fees work and how just the economic, I like to call it built environment economics, so that as you come out of school, you can be more informed in your practice. And as you work towards licensure, you just are continuing to experience things that help you to be just stronger from a business perspective, so that you can actually thrive economically in the way that so many other peer professions do, that we just on average as architects aren't doing as well with. So we're a work in progress, but I'm hoping to, through AI and other resources, help to improve those conditions. And then one specific thing that I'm advocating for this year, which isn't necessarily about practice directly, but it's actually about how we engage architects and how the public views architects. When I was running for AIA president, I talked about the importance of elevating the public profile of the architect. And one of the ways to do that is actually to help empower more architects to serve in city government in particular, but also other types of government. And so I'm promoting what's called the Chief Architect Initiative, which is essentially geared toward working with mayors throughout the U.S. to encourage them to hire an architect to be one of their key advisors on issues related to what's happening in their city. So issues around climate action, affordable housing, blight reduction, transportation, things like that architects are very uniquely well equipped to help solve. Mayors need to know what we have to offer. And so this year I'm really trying to advance the Chief Architects Initiative to, again, help raise the public profile of the architect, but also to help improve our cities, but then also to help people understand the value that architects bring, which hopefully will improve the way that our firms are engaged too. So for example, if there's a chief architect deployed at a city, then that chief architect would actually probably have a good sense of the best ways to engage an architecture firm. And so they sort of can have like a direct conversation about what's important to the city and then how the design firm can actually move that agenda forward, versus I think currently most cities don't really have that expertise in-house. And so they might engage an architecture firm and not necessarily know what to ask for, how to ask for it, or how much it should, how much it's worth. And so I think having that shorthand between architects, both in city leadership and, at the firm level, I think would be really valuable.
So speaking of cities, as they become more diverse, you believe architects can play a role in gathering people through spaces that promote both peace and harmony. What components, both physical and social, do you think are necessary to create this ideal?
Yes. Well, I definitely recommend people read the work of Jane Jacobs, kind of tying it back to, kind of the theme of the lecture series. And, she talks a lot about just the different things that are important to be mindful of, specifically engaging communities in conversation about what their what their future should look like. But also it's important that that design teams reflect the communities that they serve, because if you're coming from a place that maybe is challenged in its own ways, like I'll use Detroit as an example, and then if there's finally an opportunity for new projects to come to light, but none of the people who are working on those projects are from Detroit or have that kind of shared experience, I think there's a missed opportunity there. And of course, diverse teams are the best teams, but sort of missing having that representation, I think is something that happens a lot, but we need to be more intentional about making sure that it's again a more inclusive and diverse team. So in terms of like peace and harmony, I would say that the way to design the best projects that kind of facilitate the kind of future that we want, I think it's important to have diverse perspectives to kind of help inform what's designed, and then pair that with the community voice. So having a really strong sense of what's appropriate, especially from a sustainability and resilience standpoint, but then also culturally, so there are a lot of different factors that go into quality design. In fact, I'll make a plug here for the AIA framework for design excellence as a resource to take a look at, so that you can understand some of the factors that, or most of the major factors that play into design excellence or quality places. But then that coupled with making sure that there are people in place on the design team, who are really leading those efforts forward with cultural competence and with just sensitivity, I think is really important. So hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, actually, could you restate the question one more time? I think I may have missed a piece, but I think that's probably pretty close.
Just the ending, as far as promoting peace and harmony, like what components, both physical and social, do you think would be necessary to create those spaces?
Yeah. So thank you for restating that. I think the other piece is just understanding, like meeting communities where they are, understanding what their biggest challenges are, is important. So again, having those conversations, having those community engagement sessions, and then finding creative ways to solve those issues. And oftentimes, the financial limitations of a community are a factor. And actually, I think it's important to work in sort of tri-sector approach. And by that, I mean the public sector, the private sector, and the not-for-profit sector all working together to understand the issues and address those issues through maybe philanthropic dollars or public dollars, and then getting the private sector to all of those sectors working together with really creative design teams. I've recently heard stories of design firms that have come up against challenges with maybe a building code or something that wouldn't allow them to build something that would be really beneficial to the community that they really wanted to see happen. And this firm was really, and many firms do this, but I was thinking of a specific story, but I don't remember all the details, so I won't get specific. But the firm basically went and changed, they advocated to change the codes. They changed the policies so that they could actually build what not only they wanted to build from a design perspective, but something that would actually help to make the sort of financial model of the project work. And so just really leaning on architects to help think outside the box. And I guess the box in this case would be the building, but think outside the building and think about the policy framework, think about the sort of financial dynamics to solve some of our biggest issues, because that, doing those types of things will create more peace and harmony, because you have the types of buildings and places and spaces that the communities have said that they wanted. And when you can actually provide what the community wants, you can, probably expect better outcomes than not doing that.
So for our next question here, and I believe you did touch on this briefly, we at Marywood University School of Architecture have the honor of housing a Living City Lab, which was founded by the Center for the Living City Jane Jacobs Foundation. We are also located in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the hometown of Jane Jacobs. Have you read Jane's books on cities, and do you believe her intentions can still be practiced and implemented today?
Yes, well, as an architect, I am an optimist, and I think that the work that Jane did, and again, I'm so delighted to to be here to kind of speak as part of her series, or the series that was created in her honor, and also to receive the award last year. But her legacy is so strong because her ideas are, I think, timeless. I think that if we're able to advance those efforts, we will have better cities, we will have stronger cities, we will have more equitable cities, which are ultimately healthier. I think about the city of Chicago, where I live at least part of the time, and there's a 30-year life expectancy difference between the north side of Chicago and the south side of Chicago. And if you look at who lives in those places, you'll see certain trends. And so thinking about how do we make sure that everyone is availed of the greatest kind of like life expectancy possible. How can we design for health? How can we design for better outcomes, just generally quality of life, and then actual time time on earth. And I think that the work that Jane Jacobs did was so important because it really helped to illustrate kind of a framework for doing that. And so the extent to which her legacy can continue to live on, and the studies that you all are doing now, and the work that you'll put forward, and those of us who are already kind of in the field, and hopefully future generations will continue to read her ideas, and and continue to study how to implement them. But I think that they are timeless, and they need to continue to be implemented by everyone.
I am back.
Oh, hi, Maria.
Hello. That concludes the student questions. I was so entrenched in just listening to it all. I almost forgot to jump back on. So thank you all, Lene, Emily, and Victoria, for your thoughtful questions. I know you said you were nervous. This is the first time you've done anything like it. You were all great. You
Yes,
couldn't
wonderful
tell.
job, everyone.
Thank you. And it was, through technology and through all different places. And Kimberly, just amazing. And I can see why, I hope everyone can see why. I knew why. You were the recipient of the Jane Jacobs Leadership Award
Thank you. I
because
appreciate that.
you put into practice everything that you are passionate about. And I'm hoping that through this conversation, so many more people could really understand your platform and where you're headed with the AIA at this moment, and where you've been, and all of the seeds you have planted. So just say thank you. We have about like maybe 10 minutes left. I'm going to go through some of the questions that came in on the Q&A. Okay. So
Great.
I'll field those, and then so let me see. I'll ask you a couple here. I like this one because I'm interested in this as well. I'm interested to hear your answer. I don't, I always find similarities between Detroit and Scranton. I feel like we're
like sister cities.
sister cities somehow,
Yeah.
just from the struggles, we've all fallen on. But anyway, here's an interesting one. So what are some examples of successful collaborations between architects, cities, the communities, and the local stakeholders, like maybe the investors in that place, that you have personally been involved in, like between the architects and the community? Can you think of a project that you might want to talk about that maybe could inspire us a little bit, that something comes to mind?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about two projects. One actually I was not involved with at all, but I'm still really excited about it.
Okay.
And the other one I was involved with. So the first one I'll talk about is the Michigan Central Station in Detroit, which was vacant for most of my life, but it's actually going to be reopening June 6th of this year. So for many, many years, there was an owner who, I guess was waiting for the right moment. And Ford Motor Company decided to purchase this property from that owner and revitalize it. I love adaptive reuse. as I started my presentation, I would have loved for someone to do that with the Hudson's department store, but it's now being that site is now being turned into what will be the tallest tower in Michigan at some point. So that's, so there's something that's happening again, many, many years later, but the Michigan Central Station is really great because as I also like to share, which I didn't make up this quote, but I think it's important, the most sustainable building is the one that already exists. And so to see that like giant train station with, offices and other functions come back to life is great. In fact, as I had mentioned before, I'm sitting in New York City right now, and just down the street from me is Grand Central Station. So the same architect who designed Grand Central Station also designed Michigan Central Station. So it's very grand and beautiful. And so to see the life breathe back into it is really beautiful. So I didn't have anything to do with it, but I just want to tell people that story because it's like happening right now. Like they're scurrying to kind of put the finishing touches for the grand opening, which is June 6th. I can't go because the AIA conference is actually June 5th through the 8th in DC. So I'll be there in spirit, but that's a plug for everyone to come to the AIA conference in DC. And there are special rates for students. So please consider that. Also, I think early bird registration ends tomorrow. So you like really probably want to act quickly on that. So the second story or building story is actually not a building, it's a park, but there were some small buildings involved. So when I was a real estate project manager, right after I left HOK, I was assigned to be a project manager for the Military Park Revitalization Project. So Military Park is actually in Newark, New Jersey. So not far from New York City. I had to, take the train every week to kind of go work on the project. Of course, there were lots of emails and phone calls that happened in the in-between time. But you may recall from the slideshow, Bryant Park was in one of my slides. That was the New York City slide. So right in the heart of that was Bryant Park. So the same redeveloper who breathed new life into Bryant Park, because it's a very beautiful park in New York City now, but over a decade ago, maybe 20 years, at some point I've lost track of time, it was actually a very scary place to be. And so it was more than a decade. It was like probably 3 decades ago, but it was a scary place to be. People did not want to use the park. There was like all kinds of like sort of shady activity happening. And then Biederman Redevelopment Ventures and other partners, helped to breathe new life into Bryant Park. So basically their business model is to do that all over the country. And so they were hired to do that for Military Park. And so that was a public-private partnership. They worked closely with the city of Newark and some other philanthropic partners. And I can't remember all the names anymore because that was now 10 years ago. But what was really nice was to see that park really serve as a catalyst for development, because people sort of saw that, investment is being made in the heart of Newark, heart of downtown Newark. And it started to inspire people to kind of get active and motivated to do things. And so now that park is very vibrant. And what I was involved with, besides managing, so as a project manager, I was responsible for the budget, the schedule, and the quality of work. And so I worked very closely with the architects and with the contractors and all the different client stakeholders to project manage, which is a different thing than architecture, but I think an important skill set. So it's really beautiful to see that park now activated, people using it all throughout the year. We built what's called a comfort station, which is the fancy term for bathrooms. And there's security that's actively making sure that the park is safe. And there's also, I think, I haven't been there in a while, but originally it was like a small burger restaurant, so people could like really use the park and enjoy the park. And so lots of other things that had been vacant before are now active. And so that's one of my favorite projects that I actually worked on.
I love that. That's terrific. I'm so excited about the Michigan Central train station. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. And it won't be a train station, but it will be
right.
an innovation center. So Ford
Okay.
and many other partners are looking at the future of mobility, which I think is a really important topic.
Yeah.
Given like Detroit, Motor City, to like think
Exactly.
about what the future looks like, I think is pretty exciting, especially in such a historic and brand building.
Yeah, in Scranton, we had a pretty big implosion as well. Most of a big part of Lackawanna Avenue was imploded. I don't know if I talked to you about that.
Yeah, I
When
remember that from last
when you
year's
were
visit.
here. Yep,
Yeah,
yep. And it was traumatizing. There's a
yeah,
mall,
for
a
sure.
shopping mall there in its place, which is now being brought back to life by, organic means and people that are from the city. And we're also talking about mobility issues in Scranton quite often regarding the train being reconnected from Scranton to New York. So it's like
Mhm.
a conversation that's been happening, and I think we're getting closer and closer and closer to that happening. But it's around the same location where the implosion was, and there's the Steamtown Historic Site. So our focus is kind of going to shift next year through the Jane Jacobs lenses towards transportation. So I'm happy we're kind
Yeah,
of talking about that now, because it's, it's not necessarily of the first thing you think of when you think of Jane Jacobs, but it really should be because of her dislike of the car. So
yeah,
it's going to be an interesting 2024, 25 coming up. Stay tuned. I'm giving my plugs as well too.
yeah.
And
Now, let me ask you this. Does Scranton have a chief architect?
they do not, but we have
So,
talked about it quite often.
all right. Well,
I
seems
know
like
our mayor,
something to
Paige
continue chatting
Cognetti,
about.
has floated that by us quite. We have many architects that volunteer their time and they just serve on panels,
Which is great.
but
It's
right,
important to have architects everywhere.
everywhere. But it's something that she has talked about. Our first, and it's again in Scranton, we have the first woman mayor in the city's history too. So there's so many
Yeah,
firsts,
fantastic.
about all of this. So we have like 4 minutes left, and
Okay. Yep.
I could never wrap it up. But I'm gonna ask you one last thing, and then we're gonna have to say goodbye. And we have
Okay.
so many more questions that came through the Q&A. I'll just save them and email them to you, Kimberly, and then we'll post them on our website when we do the talk. So just so some of the questions get addressed, because there's just so much here to talk about. But this one I like to leave on a maybe future forward looking thought. So in your opinion, what are some emerging trends or innovations, let's say in architecture and urban design, that excite you the most today? So like, I'm not going to do the AI thing, but maybe talking about
Yeah, I'll talk
innovations
about that
that
as well.
are okay. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I mean, I do think that AI is going to have like a tremendous impact, and I don't think we fully understand what it will do and how quickly and how it will impact the profession. But I think we have to keep a close eye on it. But and I'm trying to, like I mentioned, I'm an optimist, right? And so how do we leverage, the power of AI to really help us become more efficient in our workflows and to, expand the creativity that we already sort of naturally have as humans. So, tying into the machine to help us do that. But, I would really love for there to be heightened attention to our existing building stock. As I mentioned, I'll say it again, the most sustainable building is already standing. And so how do we breathe new life into what we have? And, of course, new buildings are going to be required, as I mentioned in my presentation. Many of our cities are going to become more dense and attract more population. So of course, new build will be necessary, but really thinking twice about demolition and how we can breathe new life into what exists and create important connections and make sure that we have parks and public spaces that help to really facilitate the kinds of sort of health and well-being that's so vital to our human experience. And I like to say that architecture at its best elevates the human experience. And so, I'd love for us as architects and even our peers in landscape architecture and interior design and engineering and basically throughout the AAC industry, not forgetting our builders, that we all can work together more closely to ensure that we are collectively elevating the human experience and conserving our resources and leveraging technology to just create the best outcomes that we can. In fact, I'll tell one more quick story. I was consulting with a mayor a few years ago, and he shared 4 simple words that I think really sum up what I think architecture can represent for cities. See beautiful, feel beautiful. That's Mayor Friday Ellis of Monroe, Louisiana. See beautiful, feel beautiful. So let's
That
hope people feel beautiful.
perfect, perfect way to end this talk. Kimberly Dowdell, president of the AIA, my friend, our friend. You're just so incredible and so accessible and so inspiring to all of us and in
Thank
the
you.
profession and to this group of students that are here and around the country and around the world at this moment, watching you and from an existing container, which was a swimming pool and a gymnasium at Marywood
Yep.
University School of Architecture, which is now a School of Architecture.
Great adaptive reuse.
Perfect. Yes. We thank you. And from the Center for Living City, we thank you. So everyone have a great rest of today. Enjoy the beautiful weather. And thank you, Kimberly. We will stay in touch and follow you closely, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take care.
Bye.
See ya.